All right. Hello, bonjour. My name is Eric Chapu, Business Advisor here at the World Trade Center, Winnipeg. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Go Global with Confidence, FITTskills for Manitobans. I would like to begin today's webinar with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are gathered on the lands of Treaty 1 territory and that Manitoba is located on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Innu, Denisalune, and Dakota Oyate nations. We acknowledge we are also on the homelands of the Red River Métis and that northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are ancestral lands of the Inuit. The World Trade Center Winnipeg team respect the treaties that were made on these territories and acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and present throughout our nation. Before we begin, I want to share a few housekeeping items. Please send all your webinar questions directly to the chat box at the top of your screen, and they will try to answer as many as they can during the session, as well as the Q&A session at the end. For all logistical questions, please send them directly to the chat box, and I will answer your question as soon as possible. You will also receive a PDF copy and the recording of this presentation within the next week. Okay, let's start this webinar. I would like to introduce you to Lora Rigutto. Lora holds her CITP designation and has over 25 years of experience in international trade. Formerly a trade advisor with ProChile, Trade Commission of Chile in Toronto, she has helped businesses navigate global markets and export challenges. As a CITP and ICC certified Incoterms 2020 trainer for Canada, Lora brings deep expertise in trade practices and is passionate about sharing FITT's renowned training programs with students and businesses. Welcome, Lora. The floor is all yours.
Thanks so much, Eric. Hello, everybody. So I have a presentation to share with you today. Okay, you should be able to see it correctly. Correct? Yep. All right. So I'm really happy to be here today because I truly believe that the World Trade Center Winnipeg, for all of you business owners, if you work for an exporter or you're the founder of your own organization and you're looking to grow global, I truly believe that the World Trade Center Winnipeg really is doing such great things for Manitoba companies in order to help them navigate the current trade landscape, give them the skills that they need that are required in order to learn about opportunities, if it's truly an opportunity for businesses to expand into that market, and being very strategic about global expansion, because it doesn't just happen. So I'm really pleased. Thank you, World Trade Center Winnipeg, for allowing me to be here today to talk a little bit about the Forum for International Trade Training and our renowned FITTskills program. So I mentioned FITTskills. So this is our program, our international business program, and our material is copyright. So today I'm going to be taking you through a little bit of the knowledge that would be gained in each of the 6 FITTskills courses. So here are the 6 courses that I have on the screen. So feasibility of international trade is really that foundational course. And that course covers, in a nutshell, helping businesses decide if it's truly feasible for them to export, if it's feasible for them to export now. Do they have the capacity in-house currently in order to help them export? And then looking at doing like the feasibility assessment, looking for opportunities in the first place, doing that feasibility assessment, doing that cost analysis. So for food and beverage companies, what is it going to cost you to land your product in, let's say, a European country, to land that product in Spain or in Italy, or if you go to South America, what is it going to cost you? Shipping, clearing through customs, and everything else that's required. So feasibility really is a foundational course. If companies were to take one course, I highly suggest that it's feasibility, and have someone on the team name a champion within the organization to take that course, because that course is going to just lay out the whole landscape of what's involved in exporting. Or because now everybody's talking about market diversification, perhaps you're already exporting to the United States, but you're looking for new markets. So understanding that each time you go into a new international market, there's a process that you need to go through to assess the feasibility of exporting into that market. The next course that I recommend companies take is then, international market entry strategy. So maybe you've identified that it is feasible, you've done your research, understand that you want to enter into, let's think Italy, because the Olympics are happening in Italy right now. So exporting that product into Italy. So how are you going to export your product into Italy? Are you going to export direct? Are you going to go through a channel intermediary? What are your options? Is it going to be through direct exporting? Is it going to be via some kind of transfer like licensing, franchising, or maybe it's through foreign direct investment where you might open up a branch office. So these are the areas that international market entry strategies course covers thoroughly, assessing pros, cons of each option, and helping companies work through what makes sense for them so that they can become strategic about market entry. And then global value chain, it was very relevant for food and beverage companies, or any product company in particular, because understanding the whole global value chain, understanding things like Incoterms, understanding, how you're going to ship your product. So whether it's inbound or outbound logistics, that course covers it all. That course for me there was so much learning in that course. International trade finance. So you've got a buyer, you've got, a potential buyer. How are you going to finance that transaction? Do you need working capital maybe to produce the product? What about mitigating some of the risks with currencies, the risk of not getting paid maybe? So, and what are your payment terms that you use? So that's the course that answers all those questions. And then products and services for a global market. It's quite interesting. Now, and I have a slide where we talk about product modifications and adaptations, because it's not a matter of if you're going to adapt your product for a global market, it's what you need to adapt for a global market. So that course takes everybody through, the different modification adaptation options and weighing the cost benefit, because yes, it would be great to have several versions of your product or your service, but there's a cost for each modification, and so weighing cost benefit. And then international sales and marketing is my absolute favorite course. I've taught it for over a decade myself, and it's really interesting, and I have a slide on that, but it's about, okay, you've got a product, nobody knows who you are. How are you going to market you in the market, in the target market? What marketing channels are you going to use? Talking about the marketing mix, like product place, price, promotion, and how that needs to change for each market you go into. Sales, what are the approaches you're going to take, how your sales presentation, how that cultural piece matters in the markets. So there's so much learning there. And that course also has a component on e-commerce. Okay. There we go. So those are the 6 courses. Can you still see me?
Yep.
I've just
Now we can
minimized
see you.
something. Okay, so now I can't see anybody, but that's okay, as long as you can see and hear me. I've just clicked on something. All right, so three of the courses, we have credentials. So we have credentials for each course. Upon successful completion of each course, there's a certificate of completion. After three courses, there's a certificate in international trade. After the complete international business program, which is the 6 courses, you get a diploma in international trade. And then that diploma in international trade is really that first step. It is one pathway. We have other pathways, but that is really the pathway, the most direct pathway to this certified international trade professional designation. So I'm a CITP myself, which is what Eric mentioned at the beginning. And I know that World Trade Center Winnipeg has other certified professionals and others working their way towards the designation. And what that really means is that, and this is just a quote from another CITP, Mathieu works for the National Bank. And what he said that well, he first talked about FITTskills training. Is that what the FITTskills training does is give you an end-to-end comprehensive understanding of the whole sales cycle in international trade. And it enabled him as, as an advisor in the bank to ask those relevant questions to businesses, clients of the National Bank, those relevant questions to help them expand across international borders. So what the designation means to him, then he went through and got his diploma and then applied for the CITP designation. Having a CITP within an organization will allow businesses to have a bigger picture, bigger understanding of all the nuts and bolts, all those nuances, and what it truly means to go international. And as he says here, CITPs are helping businesses make important strategic decisions about whether they should enter new markets and where and whether to enter new markets and where, or to maintain their existing relationships and assess whether those activities will be profitable. So when last year, if we just rewind 1 year, it's hard to believe that it's only been a year. But if we rewind 1 year to the imposition of all those tariffs by the U.S. President Donald J. Trump, people were they were not quite sure what to do. Like, oh my goodness, maybe I can't continue exporting to the U.S. Maybe I just should start looking for new markets. Well, we know that it doesn't happen overnight. And those existing relationships in the United States took years to develop. So, there's an assessment that needs to be done. So it may make sense for companies, for exporters to continue exporting to the United States, continue working with those partners in the United States, see if each party, the importer, exporter, can maybe meet halfway in order to mitigate some of the additional costs that are involved. But looking, if you have this end-to-end big picture view and perspective of international trade and exporting and exporting into different markets, then you're better able to do that assessment, because it's so individual. Nobody knows your company like you do. So understanding all those cost structures and understanding, how that fits into the bigger context. So about, a couple months ago, we know that the federal budget was released, and within the federal budget, there was $46.5 million earmarked for the SME Export Readiness Initiative. And that's to support training for small and medium-sized enterprises, to build capacity, to make informed strategic decisions as they diversify trade. So there was an op-ed piece written by Caroline Tompkins, FITT's president and CEO, where she said that this Canada's diversification strategy can't flourish without a parallel investment in human and institutional capability. So trade doesn't happen between nations. Trade happens between individuals. Trade happens between exporters and importers. So, new markets won't emerge through just these big policy declarations. They will be opened and sustained by companies that have the right knowledge, confidence, and those global competencies to compete across borders, because we know that it is a complex, and each new market you go into has its own set of risks and complexities, but understanding, having that skill set to be able to help for individuals to then be able to look at each new market and navigate that is the key. So what our FITTskills training does, and the FITTskills training that's offered through the World Trade Center Winnipeg, provides organizations, provides businesses that tool that's required to ensure that trade growth is not built on chance. It's built on capability. So I will leave a copy of this presentation. It's just a very brief LinkedIn post, but it really hits the nail on the head. I think the fundamental reason to upskill and to empower the team, and even if you're a solopreneur, the fundamental reason to upskill is because right now, more than ever, companies need guidance. They need guidance to navigate all the sea of, training and funding and programs and technology and everything that's out there. We've heard, if we all had $1 for every time we heard about diversification, we'd all be rich right now. But, diversify. And then we hear, well, the best time to diversify was 10 years ago. And I use that phrase all the time. Best time to diversify was probably 10 years ago. Second best time is right now. But how? How do you diversify? It takes time. So in order to navigate all of this, including AI, because AI is a really interesting piece, but in order to navigate all of this, you really do need that skill set so that you can cut through all the noise, become very strategic, identify what your goals are, look and assess whether it's feasible for you to expand into a new market, if it's viable for you to do so, and what are those initial steps. And I find that businesses, there's almost a paralysis right now because they're overwhelmed. They don't know what those first steps are. But having these, taking some of the FITTskills courses, if not the whole program, will help you identify what those initial first steps would be. And then another fundamental reason, I think, is that you need to have something, you need to have it part of your unique value proposition. You need to stand out above the rest. And the way to do that is having that knowledge, finding out what is the best strategy for you to enter into new markets. And with these international trade competencies, it definitely gives you the confidence and the credibility to make those, to set your goals and then achieve those goals. And I have AI in the center of this, and I always mention use AI. And when I've done a lot of talks on how do you start, like last week, or was it the week before, I gave a little talk with the Trade Commissioner Service, and it was about market selection. And for that secondary research, that initial research, desk research, whatever you want to call it, where you're looking at, if you're trying to determine which markets might have potential for your products, You use AI. There's a lot of information that can save you a lot of time. But remember, everybody has access to that same data. Everybody has access to whatever platform you want to use, whether it's Perplexity or ChatGPT, whatever you use, everybody has access to the same. So there comes a point where, yes, use what's available to you, the data that's out there, those reports, whatever's out there, use that. But then you have to start honing in on the data that you actually need. That's going to lead you to make those important strategic decisions. Okay, here are some of the competencies. Well, here are all the 16 competencies that are covered in our FITTskills training. Everything from risk analysis and management through to, I had already mentioned market entry strategies, trade finance, but we talk about distribution, procurement, market research, I just touched on that. Document management, there's so much documentation that's required, and it's changing all the time. What you need this form, there's been a modification to the certificate of origin, and now you don't need to, include it with every ship. There's so much there. There's so many documents, and that documentary compliance piece is paramount, because if you don't have the right documents, your products are going to get stuck at the border, whichever border that is. So document management is a huge competency that our courses definitely address. And then that intercultural competence. I know that the World Trade Center Winnipeg just had a recent webinar on intercultural competence. Laws and ethics. Here definitely is an area where ignorance is not bliss. And then we talk about e-commerce and what's required at the back end in order to enable e-commerce. So we talk about localization and internationalization of your website. And then, international business development. So how you form relationships, how you form those strategic alliances or partnerships, whatever that might be. All right, so with these competencies, having that within your organization really will help you assess the risk, minimize those costly mistakes, help you with your market expansion in terms of when you're entering new markets, understanding, having done the assessment that truly is the new, the most suitable new market to enter into, and then with a solid plan to enter into that market. And then having, somebody on your team or yourself will give you that operational efficiency to improve processes, supply chain management, really truly assessing and understanding if your company is ready. And in your company, and that could be even things like, okay, we're ready. We understand we have our target market. We understand how we're going to enter into that market. We understand we need to form a relationship with the major distributor in that market, or maybe some other channel intermediary, and determine that export readiness. And then that missing piece might be, we might need to apply for funding. So having somebody with that expertise is going to know when to reach out for help. And that could be funding, it could be reaching out to the Trade Commissioner Service, but only at the right time. So also the trade expertise on staff will give you that competitive advantage. I mentioned that earlier, because you've got that current knowledge, you're on top of, that individual is on top of trade trends and understands best practices, better able to build strong partnerships for the long run. You don't want to enter into a market and be one and done. You want that long-term, that sustainability. And helps you if you've done the assessment and you determine that there are profits to be earned, then it'll help with that long-term sustainable revenue stream, maximizing the profitability for that target market. All right, so always, there are opportunities out there. but wherever there are opportunities, there lurks danger. So the two are really inseparable. They go together, but it's about how you mitigate those risks and how you seize the opportunities. It's just a balance between the two. And it involves having that skill set that enables you to assess opportunities, mitigate risks, and strategize for that market. So successful leaders need a solid grasp of, what does it truly mean for your company to be export ready? Is it feasible for your company to enter into a particular market? Do you have, how suitable are your products and services? And do you need to make, or which modifications do you need to make? Maybe it's just packaging, maybe it's the labeling, maybe it's colors, whatever that might be. What strategy are you going to use for each target market you're going into? Just because you enter, let's say you enter into Italy through a distributor, doesn't mean you enter into Spain through a food distributor as well. Maybe in Spain, you have to go a different route. Maybe you go direct to the large retailer. I don't know. So that's a decision that needs to be made with every market you go into. Sales and marketing, I mentioned earlier, supply chain and logistics. You need to understand, doesn't mean that you need to be a logistics expert or customs compliance plays into supply chain and logistics. Doesn't mean you need to understand everything that's required, like from a compliance perspective, everything that's required, with your documents and any kind of customs procedure, but you need to know enough to be able to reach out to the right individuals that do. And then trade finance, huge piece, because if you can't finance your exports, then you probably should not even attempt to enter. All right, we always spend a lot of time talking about export readiness. Typical successful exporting organizations, their products or services are successful domestically, so they're not just a startup that just starts up and then starts exporting in a foreign market. So typically successful domestically, there's some traction here, there's a proven business plan. It has to be something unique about your product, unique in one or more ways, and there has to be value in your product, competitively priced, not necessarily lowest price, but competitively priced. The organization itself, there has to be this understanding that going global or expanding takes time, takes people, and takes capital. You have to be willing to be in it for the long run, and you have to be willing to go in without a return for a period of time. And I have on here buy-in, and I find that that's really important because I work for a small manufacturer here in Ontario, and the company was manufacturing electrical equipment. And I was hired as an export manager because they wanted to export into Mexico. And I did not have the buy-in. Like initially they saw me coming in, and when I was suggesting and when I started to go through and look at certain things like how they classified their products and plain and simple, was it really a product of Canada? Because the components some came from China, some came from the United States, and then it was assembled in Ontario. So I started to question, can we truly say that it's a product of Canada? So I was raising all these red flags that I saw because of my background in international trade and having my diploma in international trade, and I was a CITP at that time. So I started raising red flags about like everything. Everything was for me to pick through and to assess. And when we chose Mexico as the target market, people within the organization, and I'm talking C-suite, not everybody was on board. And especially finance was going, oh, this is going to be a lot of money, and that's really expensive. And so that was finance, and yeah, we're not going to see any profits for a couple of years. And then production, they were like, we have to modify things, but that's not the way we do it. So initially, I didn't have that buy-in from all the internal stakeholders. But once I created that export plan, and it was very detailed, and I had an approach for the Mexican market, and then I created that, and then I circulated that, and then they kind of saw it. They thought, okay, if we're going to do this, because they had, and this was more than 10 years ago, they had their number one customer in the United States, and probably 85% of their business was in the United States, and one customer. So I said, if that customer decides to go with another supplier, another manufacturer, like, what's going to happen? 85% of our business will be gobbled up overnight with one decision to go with another strategic supplier. And then they kind of got it. So, but it took a really long time to get them to get that buy-in. So what I'm saying is that there really needs to, some of those hard questions have to be asked, and understand that this, in certain organizations, this might take longer than in other organizations. So companies that are export ready are, sensitive to and aware of cultural differences in doing businesses in other countries. And that's often the part where companies are feeling overwhelmed, because it's a different way of doing business in other markets, and they're not quite sure about that, cultural piece, and how they form relationships. And so, but successful exporting organizations do understand that cultural differences and how you build relationships are really paramount. And then successful organizations have, conducted their gap analysis. They understand where they are currently. They understand what they need to do to get into a position where they can, define those gaps and then address those gaps. And sometimes it's a matter of hiring someone with that international trade expertise, or that knowledge of that country. So you could hire someone that's maybe from that country that you're looking to go into, and has experience in that market, that understands how things work, time things take, understanding if maybe really means no, or no might mean yes. There's all these little cultural nuances. Market, how am I doing on time? So I'll just briefly give you some highlights. So market feasibility involves screening markets for size, growth, accessibility. Can you enter into that market? Do you have, let's say you need a specific standard to get into that market. Maybe it's an organic standard, halal, whatever that might be. Is that market accessible to you right now? What are your market priorities? Because a whole country might not be your priority. So if you're going into Italy, maybe Milan is your priority, not necessarily all of Italy, or not the north, not the south, and north and south. Maybe it's just the north. Maybe it's just central. Maybe it's just specific, depending on your product. Maybe you're tailoring it a little bit differently, or just a little more narrow. Doing your market research. I mentioned market research, the secondary sources. What I want to say is understanding that there comes a time where you need that primary research. And that primary research, I always say, no better place to get primary research than going to a trade show, especially when there's a B2B matchmaking component. As part of that trade show, you can talk to so many people under one roof. under one initiative, where you could be talking to maybe potential partners. You could be talking to, in many cases, it could be the provincial government, federal government, like the Trade Commissioner Service, and then you get their insights. You could be talking, if you're wandering, if you're walking a trade show, you can see what your competitors are doing. There's just so much opportunity to get that primary research, those key pieces of data that might help you make your decision. And then sometimes it makes sense to reach out to a firm, to a consultant that has that specialized knowledge of your particular market and your particular sector. So sometimes it will save you time, and time is money, to get someone else, a consultant that knows more than you, to help you get that key piece of data. Maybe it's to determine what the demand is, the specific demand in that market. And then you can once you have all that data, then you can truly assess the potential, and then assess the costs, the total landed costs, the risks involved. And then I have here, if, margin to be earned, because if there's no margin to be earned, then I wouldn't suggest you enter into a new global market. Suitability of products and services, I mentioned it before, but looking at, what modifications need to be made. Maybe it's for compliance reasons. Maybe it's for, you need to adapt your product for marketing purposes. Looking at the intellectual property protection in that market. So how important is it for you to protect your IP? What are the risks involved in that market? And then finding out how you go about protecting your IP. And then that product liability piece. What if somebody gets injured when they consume your product? What is the legislation around that? So that's a whole different analysis that needs to be done. International sales and marketing, I mentioned it at the outset, but understanding your marketing mix and the interconnectivity between the four elements of the marketing mix. So understanding that what your product is, and it doesn't have to be your whole product line. You might go into a new market with only certain products, right? Just because you have a complete product line doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go in with the full spectrum. So understanding what product it is and how you place that product. So whether it's through a distributor, maybe it's through a wholesaler. So understanding how you place the product will determine the price. And then will also determine the promotion. So understanding what your product is, channels, let's say social media. So understanding which channels are more important and a better fit for your particular product. Price, I always mention two things. I have unique challenges. So never two big things. When you quote a price in an international market, make sure you quote using a currency and an Incoterm. So I'm just going to leave that there. So these are some of the things we work through in international sales and marketing. Incoterms are sprinkled through all FITTskills training because they're really important, really at every stage of your export journey. But you never quote a price without quoting an Incoterm, because your price, let's say here in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, your price to let's say supermarket down the road or within the city, let's say, I don't know, a $10 box of chocolates into a local supermarket, maybe that $10, it's $10, the wholesale price. But if you were selling that same box of chocolates to an international buyer, to an international, let's say, again, going to Italy, big supermarket chain located in Milan, can't beat $10. So, and what price are you going to use? You're going to put it as US dollars, or you're going to put it as euro. And then Are you going to cover the costs of shipping and clearing through customs, or are you going to expect this supermarket to pick it up, let's say on board a ship in Halifax, yeah, from Winnipeg, you go over to Halifax, whatever. There's so many considerations. So you got to understand that you using an Incoterm, you really need to truly understand which Incoterm you're most comfortable using, and then have your price list with the currency and the Incoterm. And then sales and business development. How are you going to develop those relationships in the market? And then how are you going to support your customers, that after sales service and support? What level of service can you offer them? What level of support? So that all has to be worked into your plan. Market entry strategies. I mentioned that when I talked about our course. But you've got the three main buckets of market entry, your trade entry, your transfer related, which is like the licensing, franchising, and then the foreign direct investment. I would never start or recommend, if you're going into a new market, that you start with a branch office or representative office. It's usually the evolution. You would start maybe with exporting, like direct exporting or indirect exporting, and then with some traction in the market, maybe then you analyze the possibility of doing some foreign direct investment through a branch office. Supply chain, there's a lot here. Don't worry, I'm not going to read everything here, but understanding everything from inbound logistics to outbound logistics. So those are these are the primary activities, and then how that's connected into sales and marketing and servicing at the end. And then trade finance, understanding, your payment risks, your currency risk, your country risk, how you do your due diligence and check on the credit worthiness of your buyer, your potential new, your importer, your buyer. There's a lot in trade finance. The payment terms is going to be on open account, letters of credit. So there's a lot here in that trade finance course. So I've covered these 6 courses. I really do recommend, I'm going to put the floor back to open it back up. If you have any questions, please let me know. But I really recommend that you reach out to the World Trade Center because they're running an excellent program. I know right now they're running the feasibility of international trade. I just noticed it. Type this, my spacing just jumped up, but they're running feasibility of international trade, and it really is that foundational course that's going to help you take those initial next steps. So thank you very much, everyone. So I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute. Yeah, Laura will answer your questions.
Maybe I can just ask this, is anybody looking at a market outside of the United States currently, or actively exporting outside of North America?
Hello. My name is Fernando. I'm from Argentina.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, I'm involved in the project to import beef from Argentina to Canada, to Winnipeg. We are in touch with the CFIA.
Right,
IA.
Canadian Food Inspection Agency.
Yes, exactly. In order to get all the authorization, we already create our business here. Well, we try to go global with confidence.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Fernando, because FITTskills training does cover both sides. Covers the procurement side, because international trade is exporting and importing. So you're on the procurement side, you're procuring from Argentina, and same thing. You have to understand that regulatory landscape, and you mentioned CFIA and what the regulations to get your products into Canada and the certifications that are required, and there's a lot. And I know because I worked for the government of Chile, so we spent a lot of time, because the mandate of any foreign government in Canada is to help get more products from that country into Canada. So understanding certifications that are required, like phytosanitary and all that. It's a lot when you're talking about consumables like food products, food and beverage. Yeah. So our training does cover on both sides, that procurement piece and that regulatory piece matters to everyone, because even if you're the exporter, you still need to be able to assist your importer or your buyer
Exactly.
navigate this, right? You have to provide the right documentation. Like you can't just say, oh, that's your problem. That's not the way relationships work.
No, because it's my problem.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have you reached out to the consulate in Toronto? Like
no, not yet. No, not yet, because I'm centering here in Winnipeg. Yes, I was in touch with the Winnipeg Chambers of Commerce and the Manitoban Food and Beverage Association.
Right.
And now I'm looking for a supply company. Yes, in order to try to do all the chain steps. Yes, to all the process. Yes, I'm looking for. I have already have a buyers.
Right. Wow.
Yes, that is the very important point. And we will start with a commercial sample. I think in next month. That it. But as you say, yes, it's important to know all the steps in the process. Yes, in order to be sure we are in the hard way.
Yeah, that's excellent. And now, if so, companies don't realize. So all the consulate or foreign foreign countries have representation in Toronto. There's also a commercial section of every embassy in Ottawa, but most of the trade commissions are located in Toronto. So their mandate is to help get more, in this case, more Argentinian products into Canada. So they'd be more than happy, and for any other food and beverage company that's looking to import from a foreign country, like reach out. They want to hear from you. They will bend over backwards to give you a vetted list of, qualified suppliers, and they will invite you to different buying events like missions and matchmaking. I mean, that's what I did for so many years, just for the Chilean government. So that for you, like, get to know them, introduce yourself, and you're at a stage where like you've got a plan in place. They might be able to help navigate you and facilitate some introductions. So
yeah, that is very interesting that you are saying. Yes, we are learning in the way. We are learning a lot of things. Yes, that is very important information that you give me. Yes, I will investigate that way.
Yeah. And that feasibility course that the World Trade Center Winnipeg is offering, because that feasibility piece, you're going to have to do the feasibility scenario for here in Canada. Is it feasible by the time you pay the duties? Because there's no free trade agreement between Canada and Argentina. So I don't know what the tariffs are on beef and food products, but you have to do that feasibility. How much is it going to cost for you to ship the product into Canada and then get it to Winnipeg? And then, what are the margins? And you really have to do that cost analysis piece. So feasibility, if you were to take one course, Fernando, take that feasibility course, really.
Yes, it's very important. Yes, of course.
One other thing I should mention is since there are no questions, FITTskills training is country neutral. So what that means is it doesn't matter, like in this case, if you're Fernando looking to import from Argentina, or if you're a Canadian company, a Manitoba company that's looking to export into Italy. or wherever else, you know. So it's not about, like, our curriculum isn't set up just to, you know, for Canadian companies to export into whatever market. It's for any country, because it's about understanding what's required, what you need to find out about how the market's structured. So it's not, you know, there are lots of doing business in XYZ country guides. And but these are not those guides to doing business in all the countries around the world. This is about teaching you how to be strategic and understanding what you need to research in order to do business in any market.
And sorry to jump in on there, but in the specific courses, the various instructors bring in examples from all over the world.
Yes.
So we could be talking about, I know in the international market entry, they're talking about a company from Argentina, fictitious, of course, in the case studies, going to Japan or vice versa. And so examples are not just Canada-based or Canadian involved in one of the aspects of that relationship. It's a shared nation, shared example.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Mm-hmm. And having instructors, like we have our FITTskills training that any company can take online, and it's asynchronous, and you can take it, you know, at your own pace, at your own time, and that works for some businesses, right? They take, I don't know, at night they carve out some time. But there's something about having it instructor-led and an instructor that has a wealth of experience. And I know that when I taught international sales and marketing, I basically would storytell. Yes, we would get through the course, but I would storytell about things that, you know, I had encountered, like with getting, you know, I remember there was a Chilean company that was exporting these organic juices, and they had them in these fancy bottles. They were beautiful, and they sold them all over the world, except they wanted to get on to list them with Amazon.ca. And then Amazon said, well, you want to sell them on our platform, you're going to have to change it to tin. And they went, tin, our lovely product in tin. And they're like, well, either you want to play in this marketplace or you don't. So I tell, you know, my students, who are all adults, I would tell them about this example. And then, you know, just having an instructor that pulls these examples really makes that curriculum come to life. So I do love the instructor-led, you know, the delivery, because they do, with examples, their experience, they make these things come to life. And often will help you, you know, those red flags, you can read about red flags in the textbook, but when you have someone that can tell you, well, this cost us, you know, $10,000 just because we didn't check the right box, or because we had our product misclassified and, you know, it got stopped at the border and then we were slapped with a penalty. So these things, like having an instructor led, is just it just enhances your learning for sure.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions, I've listed a couple webinars and events. So we have WTC Talk tomorrow from 4 to 6 at Shrugging Doctors. So that will be in partnership with MIA, Manitoba Environmental Industry Association, and Paul Bauer, president of Miller Environmental, will be sharing his thoughts. Again, associated with Manitoba Food and Beverage, they have the FITTskills and Feasibility of International Trade. So that will be March 19th to April 9th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Thank you, Laura. I think this was valuable information. Again, we are so welcome and thankful for this information. And again, I think FITTskills is it's something that once you're aware of and you start understanding the value you get from these courses, it's huge, because again, when you are just learning to export, it can be very overwhelming. And I hear a lot of entrepreneurship saying it doesn't just happen right away. It takes time, it takes lots of research, and again, the more information you can get, the better. So again, thanks everyone for joining the webinar, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow. And thanks again, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.